Hello, my name is Mary Kay. I'm a devotee of the I Ching. I use it to make all kinds of personal decisions and also help my clients with matters relating to relationships, jobs, careers, buying a house, you name it. However, the I Ching was really developed back 3,000 years ago in Western China to help emperors with more weighty decisions, such as whether to go to war, whether to form an alliance, whether to move a city. So, in keeping with that tradition, I decided to come out on video and commit ahead of time to sort of examine what the I Ching really thinks about the upcoming election, our all-important presidential election happening on Tuesday. I'm asking this not too far ahead, but still few days so that we can get this out there and commit to a stand. So here goes. So when I consult the I Ching, I generally never ask it only one question. I usually ask it two. For instance, the wisdom of doing something, the wisdom of not doing something. The I Ching is a complex oracle and will often feed back on several levels at the same time, which is why it's important for interpretation to try to ask the two questions so that you get a more clear demarcation. And this reading will indicate what I mean by that. So the question I asked the I Ching for both candidates is, what is the probability that Trump will prevail in the upcoming election? And then I also asked, what is the probability that Biden will prevail in the upcoming election? Without getting into the mechanics of the reading, which I'll explain in another video at another time, for Trump, when I asked the question about the probability, started out with the hexagram for modesty, which is kind of funny for Trump because of anything, and I'm sure he himself would admit, and he would consider it a weakness. Modesty, he's not modest about anything. And the I Ching actually considers modesty a very high virtue. And so I think, in a sense, the I Ching was kind of being ironic here, kind of poking a sort of a joke about Trump being modest about winning the presidency. Sort of almost like a double negative, like he's not modest and therefore he's not going to win the presidency. But also you can at times interpret modesty as actually meaning a person in a modest position, like not in a great exalted position. So the I Ching is also good at plays on words. So in this sense, it's modest, meaning not expensive, not exalted. So we go from modesty to abundance. But again, abundance is actually not really that abundant. It turns out it's the sun at midday. And it actually even refers to a king being at the sun at midday. And just think about the sun at midday. I mean, what kind of image does that evoke? It's midday, but then what's going to happen? Temporary, right? The sun's going to keep going, and it's going to eventually set. So yes, there's brilliance at midday, but it's not going to last. So I found that an interesting metaphor. For the sort of brilliance that Trump has experienced in his time as president, and perhaps with this election, he's on the wane. So you might be wondering what my own personal politics are. Yes, I'm a Biden supporter, but I'm also a very ethical I Ching practitioner. If I saw the reading was stronger for Trump, I would say so and interpret it accordingly, which I did in a blog back in 2016. Initially, I kind of in that situation, I actually misinterpreted it, but then I rewrote the blog and saw how the reading did come out in Trump's favor, even though it was a surprise win and a surprise read. Biden's reading is very interesting. We start with revolution, which the Chinese did not take lightly. And when they meant revolution, they meant, burning down the city and, overturning the government and throwing all the tyrants in jail and, capturing slaves. And I mean, it was a really dramatic affair, which is why really only one hexagram in the entire I Ching deals with it. And we got that one when I asked about Biden. Got the sign for revolution. And I want to read one very quick passage from a very beloved book, I think, for many of you who know the I Ching, the Wilhelm Baines book that came out in the 50s, which was the first considered good translation of the I Ching. I think it's since been a little overruled by more Chinese influenced translations, but even so, even with its German romanticist heart, it has its place in the I Ching canon in the English language. At any rate, I love this line. It just always brings tears to my eyes, and we got it with this reading for Biden. When talk of revolution has gone the rounds 3 times, one may commit himself, and men will believe him. And yes, the sexist language is here in the book. I'm not making that up. And another key to the reading, and I'm going to read this out of a different translation that's a little bit more Chinese, is also dramatic. Superior person changes like a panther. Petty fellows change faces. So then it changes to a hexagram, meaning a reading, for having to do with truthfulness and speaking the truth and staying in the truth. So it has to do with, like, for instance, strength of motion, free from untruthfulness, dishonesty, holding to the truth, no matter what. What's considered first is not the reward one will attain, but whether work is good for humanity. So there's, Biden is really being called to be the holder of integrity here. And the I Ching is kind of affirming that he is a ruler with integrity. All right, so I'm going to come out and commit myself here. It's showing that Trump has modest gains at the polls, is a king at midday, sun's going to set. Biden is riding the revolution wave, but he also needs to stay really aligned with the truth and speak truth to power and truth to the American people. Thanks for listening. I give also personal readings. I can be reached through my website at decisionpointiching.com, which will also be shown on my YouTube channel. In the meantime, don't forget to vote. Your vote is very important, regardless of whom you're voting for. Exercise your power in a democracy. Something that's not to be ever taken for granted. Take care and good night.